Hello and welcome to a video where this is a follow-up to our previous video about ACL injuries, and especially with female athletes. And this is where last time I just spoke about the risks and how it happens. This time we're going to sort of give you some ideas on how to prevent it using exercise strategies. So very first thing you want to do is identify poor movement. So recently I went up to a football club in the country region of New South Wales in Australia, and we were invited to go up and have a look at some of the female football players there too, because there was a number of ACL injuries in the previous season. So the clubs wanted to have something, an action taken to make sure it doesn't happen again. So a lot of the stuff I'm going to share with you in this video are going to be actual video footage of some of these players, and you'll actually get to see comparisons of some of the ones who are there's little risk versus the ones that have got a high risk. And how I sort of did it over in a very short amount of time with a lot of people. So the key thing that I had to try and look for was like poor movement patterns like this one here. This is just this is really an example of just a lot of things going on and really showing energy leaks, which are also potential risks. So instability, coordination, stiffness, weakness. It could be any one of those. It could be all of those. So you have to really be use a lot of things to sort of try and pinpoint things, but not get held up on thinking it's only one thing. So the hard part is, where do you start? So the easiest thing to know where to start is think about, okay, where is the injury likely to occur? And it's most often in a single leg stance, and it's most often in a lateral movement from either a cut or a pivoting move, or from the single leg landing from a jump. So in all cases it's single leg stance, either laterally or landing. So they're the things you want to sort of put the person into, see what strategies they're using to move, and even when you show them the right way, they often can't do it. And again, it comes back to any one of these, and I'm going to show you how I do that. So basically, these poor movements will all have these sort of common threads to them all, and they're creating the dysfunction. And really we want to have all of this stuff to have perfect timing and motor control, good performance, and all these things must be working within a split second to make sure the injury is prevented. And there's a strong cutting move, that's a poor cutting move. All right, so it's optimal, that's dysfunctional. This is just slow, highly risky. This is extremely explosive, fast, and no risk. All right, but how do you just get to that? That's the tricky part. All right, so again, like I was saying, you need like a checklist. Really, you need like a comprehensive, full-on thing. But when I went up to the football club, there's no way I could have done that with that many players in the amount of time I was there, and I would have been exhausted as well. So I'm going to show you my shortcut version, that sort of, when you sort of know what you're looking for, you can sort of break off into different areas, like I mentioned there. But these are sort of the things I was using. So like a basic squat, a one leg squat, a lateral lunge, a single leg hopping forward, a single leg hopping laterally, then a single leg cutting move, and also running technique. All right, so the single leg squat out of them all is probably the king. That's the one that really predicts most of the stuff that I'm looking for, because sometimes it hides in the others, you don't see it. In the single leg squat, it instantly is seen. There's nowhere for it to hide. All right, so because it basically needs all of these perfect timing. Foot stability is a big one. It's 3 times I found it out of, I think it was 12 players we looked at. There's 3 times we found foot stability was a real issue, and they never knew. They never knew it was an issue until we actually asked them to do a few things. Coordination, obviously, again, we see a lot of poor control of the coordination that makes things look stiff, but they're not. Glute strength, obviously. This one's the king for the cutting movement. So here's one of the videos I'm about to show. This is the cutting movement. You can see it really needs the same sort of positioning and just the standing still thing. So meaning it basically mimics the injury very, very closely. So that's why you really want to look at this one, and then obviously enhance it as best as you can. All right, so let's have a quick look at these videos to see how we did it using 5 simple tests. Okay, so here's one of the first videos, or one of the first things I will do when I'm looking at how people move before we can sort of, like basically just to identify the risk factor for doing more advanced skills, and especially if they're playing sports. So so the common thing that I might see is if we look at the girl on the right here and we watch her do a squat, so when we see her squat, that's really good form, all right? So anyone can tell that that's really good technique, great movement through the hips and the ankles and the knee, and good postural position. So when I sort of see that, I'm already thinking, okay, I'm ruling out a few things, and they're the angles that I'm looking for. So I know she's got some good ankle stability, she's got some good stability throughout her entire chain, all right? So that means that I can move pretty quickly to some jumping stuff with minimal risk. However, when I see squats that have a real timing problem, and and you see this is a typical squat that we'll see. All right, so this is not just limited to this girl. I see this all the time, especially people who do a lot of gym work, to be honest. So you can just have a look at the angles compared to the other girl. The minimal risk here, she's going to land in a perfect posture, have incredible strength. This girl's going to have a massive energy loss. Very difficult to improve jumping and cutting ability with a squat like that, right? So that's the very first thing I look at. Now, there could be many reasons. Could be a real weakness around through the glutes. Could be ankle loss. Could be weak feet. It could be a number of, could be all of the things above. Could be even things around the pelvis and the hip. So there's just many things to consider, but the first thing to do is acknowledge that there's something wrong with this that needs to be addressed before you can move to the more powerful stuff. All right, so let's look at the next one. So the next thing I move to is always single leg stuff, not always in that order, but I'm definitely going to have a look at this because it just gives away a lot. So again, if we look at the girl on the right, you'll see she possesses great control. So we'll see her drop it. Look at the beautiful alignment through the ankle, the knee and the hips. A little bit of a drift in, but at the bottom able to control it. All right, so that's an awesome alignment, and we'll see the exact thing on the left leg as well. All right, so good control throughout the entire chain. No loss of balance at any point there. All right, so we just get that awesome leg alignment. If we go back to the right one, just so you can see it. All right, so that we're really looking for that hip, knee, and ankle all to bisect each other perfectly straight. Now, what we commonly see is the girl on the right here just loses total control. A lot of lost control through the foot there. Just a real difficult. See that's the horrible alignment. That's where you'll see the ACL tears and the patella trekking. No real sense of being able to correct it either. And then this side's even worse, and then again you'll see just all sorts of problems arising through that, and really getting that horrible angle. So we again have to really work through this before we can progress to the cutting and the jumping stuff with minimal risk. If she doesn't do that, like the sport, she's going to be doing it anyway. The sport is going to be risky, and that's where the chance of ACL tears are pretty high. All right, so this is a great simple assessment tool to sort of see where, if you're able to move ahead and where you need to look at. All right, so let's look at the lateral lunge next. Okay, so next thing I would look at is the lateral movement, and it's always the lateral movement that really wrecks the knee. So obviously you'd want to have a good look at it, and this is where the cutting movements are created. If you can't do a fairly straightforward lateral lunge with good form, you're really going to struggle to do anything that's moving faster with good form. So it makes sense to look at this. So again, let's look at the girl on the right who demonstrates good form. And you'll see, look at her depth as well, incredible technique on this. And you get to have a look. So let's have a look at her move to the other side. And great hip action and sticking out. And you'd see if I go back to the first one, you can see better the angle, like how she's right over the top of her, over the top of her ankle with her knee again, because that's the key. You really want hips, knees, and ankles stacked on top of each other. When they start twisting out, and the other thing looking for is this foot to be really straight, and you'll see in the cutting videos in a minute how important that is. Now, if we have a look at the girl on the left here, this is where we'll see, like, this is partly a coordination, because she did improve once we sort of told her what to do, but that's the movement that she had like after watching others do it. So it's sort of telling you that real lack of skill and coordination. And flexibility looks like it's stiff there, but dude, flexibility is not a problem. It's just that it doesn't have any good control. Now it starts to go a bit wider and places it out, but still doesn't quite have. And see how that foot turns out? That's a real critical factor here, because you'll see when we do the cutting thing, for starters, that's a real energy loss on the change of direction, but it's also when you start to see the knee get torqued if she's trying to change back, which is what this exercise is trying to do. He's trying to change back the other way. When you turn that foot out like that, it's really hard to bounce back, and that's when you, like we're saying, sort of really twisting the knee around. All right, so a lot of things to clear up in this, and also the other thing you can sort of see on the very first one, how sort of tall she wants to sort of stand up straight, where this girl's bending right over. You see where you just can't get any more range out of the ankle when you've got a stiff upper back. So they're sort of in a posture that's upright instead of being like that. All right, very much like the squat. All right, so they're the things we look at before we progress to the hard things. So now let's look at what the hard things look like. Okay, so once we've sort of assessed the squat, the lateral lunge, the single leg squat, and obviously there'd be a stack of other things we'd want to do, but they're the key things that I really look for when I'm trying to shortcut things, especially in a football club who are already doing stuff. They're already playing and moving and training like that anyway. I need to get in there pretty quickly to implement some of the strategies that they can use to ensure that the risk of playing and training is minimised. So once we've sort of got the foundations there, then we move into just basic hopping drills. Now, firstly, we just start with just hopping forward. It's the simplest one. So it's basically the single leg squat in a much faster version. So here's an example of where we start off and we're trying to land really stiff. So when we jump, and we land straight away into a stiffness, and trying to control, see how she's trying to control that knee. After we've done, say, maybe through the ladder 3 or 4 times, just doing forward, like say a left leg and then the right leg, then we move into this next part where we've got like a cutting position. All right, so first thing is I want to make sure I've got that right. All right, and then I can move into lateral stuff, which I'm going to show you in a second. We will do that on its own as well, and then move into this where we incorporate forward and sideways. But just to save a bit of time, I'm going to show you it now. So then we want to move straight away out into a real cut wide and then land back stiff again. So she's got to like hit the ground pretty hard and come back. And you can sort of see when she's landing here, that foot has got to be really, this is again where we were looking on that lateral lunge before, that foot's got to be very parallel. If that turns out, those toes turn out, she's going to like torque that knee in. And that's where we see all the issues. So, and she just won't be able to change direction quickly anyway. So, and basically her body's got to be right, stacked right above, really wants to stay right in the ladder, like her head sort of in the ladder. So she's jumped a bit wide on this one. You can sort of see on the second one she was a little bit better on that. So it says a little bit better cut. See where her body's still really over here and the legs planting out wide to then transfer back. And then when she comes back in, then you'll see that she'll stick her landing beautiful, and that's where she's got to control that femur rolling in, and that's the ankle and the hip, working together as a team. All right, so this is a great little drill that you can use as warm-ups, and just doesn't have to be very far, just a short distance is enough, and you'll get a lot out of that. All right, and obviously you do left leg, and then you would do right leg, have a break, maybe do some ball skills, come back and do it again. So again, if you're basketball or something, same thing, you could shoot some free throws, come back and do this, in between learning the drills of how to cut correctly. All right. Okay, so just to show you the common mistake that we see with the hopping and where it gets magnified. So this girl showed excellent form on a single leg squat, lunge and everything, yet when we asked her to move quickly like this, and she doesn't obviously practice it, we start to see the cracks emerge of like faulty timing. And you'll see this is the first time we asked her to do it, and look how straight she lands. Can you see how she just like her torso is just dead upright, and all that bends is her knee. She gets like nothing from her hips, and you see like that foot starts to point out as well. It's just a horrible landing position. It's just everything going into her knee. She can't absorb any of the shock into the rest of her body. All right, so now on the next, after we sort of worked on it a little bit, she still wasn't perfect, but
you can start to see where she gets like a bit more of a hip action. You see the difference? Alright, so then as she'll land, she'll get their hips sinking back versus say these first couple here. Watch, there's no hip action as she lands. Bang, it's just knee. Where this one, as she starts to understand how to use it, yeah, that one was not as great as the second one there, but there you go. Lost a bit of her timing, but a lot better understanding of how to absorb the shock. And that's a common thing that we see, right? So this is why this is a great drill to use, and teaching better motor control and how to find the stability. Just needs to work on the fundamentals a little bit longer, and then she'd be able to control that knee falling in, as you can see here. So, you know, she'd be able to, which she did do when she was just standing still. Just once she moved quickly, couldn't do it. But, you know, the first time she'd sort of been doing it. All right, so that's a good example of how things can change once you understand how to time it. All right, so the lateral hopping drill, not lateral just means sideways. Again, you can sort of see that this is where we see a lot of the females landing too straight. So we'll see their upright body with she's got a good hip action behind her, so she's already starting in a good spot, as we've seen already. But a lot of the time we'll see this knee bent, the hip, and then the body's upright like this, and that's usually how they'll land. And that's when the knee just gets shoved right over, the femur gets shoved right over the knee, and that's all terrible stuff. That's why you often see it on landing. All right, so this is a great drill for landing, and then we're moving sideways at the same time. So firstly we would just go through the ladder. So ignore those witches hats, imagine they're not there, and we would just do these constant jumps just like that. All right, so she'd be just learning how to jump all the way through the ladder, obviously doing a right leg and a left leg. After they've done that a few times and got the perfect landings like so, then you would move into like a backward and then straight away jump forward. A backward and then a forward. And again. Alright, and then after you've done that and you've perfected that one, you would then do the forward and the back, which is the harder version. Alright, so the key is you've got to have this beautiful hip, ankle, everything beautifully controlled. Alright, so it's a lot harder than it looks. But a great drill for teaching you dynamic stability to prevent these terrible ACL injuries and even foot and ankle problems, to be honest. So a great drill that you can use. All right, so now I'm going to show you how it gets even harder.
I hope you enjoyed those. I'm going to put them on the YouTube separately as well, so you can just go and look at them individually, but it sort of makes more sense when you see them go from easiest to hardest. So things to explore, you know, to keep in mind to get from the dysfunctional to the great movement is the foot stability. Look at your feet, the excessive pronating, weak feet, tight ankles. Big toe is a key here if you see any issues with the big toe, so there's good videos we have about that. Mobility drills, you know, if you've got stiffness around the hips and the ankles, you're never going to really be able to get in the position to do things, so you have to look at that. Timing, coordination, so how are you moving? So again, we see people just bending the knee and trying to stay straight with the trunk, and we saw that on one of those videos. So look for the good hip hinging, and when you actually you educate them, it's what looks like it's stiff there. It wasn't really stiff at all. It was just poor timing. Strengthening the glutes. You might have to start with simple things if there's a lot of weakness there before progressing to the harder stuff, and obviously in the single leg stuff. Tools like sensor mats and tubing around the knees are really good, because that sort of brings into play all of the things that we brought here, using things to assist you to find it. And then the last stuff is the power, and that's where we saw all the hopping drills and jumping stuff. So forwards, backwards, sideways, backwards. You know, all these things are really where you want to get to, and that's where you want to get to, where you want to be training really, because that's where you're going to be playing anyway. So the sooner you can get to here, the better you're off you'll be. All right. So here's examples of foot stability and drills. And all these are all videos on the YouTube channel. You can go and look up in website articles. So have a look in the link under this video, because there's descriptions and links to find these straight away. And if you need more help, obviously get our extended video, which is a 60-minute video with about 60 exercises, and it's all the assessments I've left out are all covered in this. So all the stuff that I've just mentioned there are all covered on how to do that. So I highly recommend that if someone plays sports, someone with knee pain right now, that would definitely help you out. All right, so I hope you've enjoyed that video, and I'll see you on one of our next ones.